excellent.
You started January full of energy. You were ready to take on this brand new year. And then February came, and then you felt a little less excited or a little less motivated. But you pushed through, and now it's March, and for a lot of people, those New Year resolutions, well, they have completely faded. We have forgotten about those. The workload is beginning to feel heavier. The stress is starting to pile up, and you're running on fumes. Well, if this sounds familiar, I want to encourage you because you're not alone. See, burnout isn't just feeling tired. It's emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. Burnout will wreck your performance, your health, and not only your professional life, but also your personal life. And here's the kicker. High achievers are the ones who suffer from it the most. So whether you're an employee struggling to stay motivated or a manager that's not only trying to prevent burnout with your team, but also for yourself, well, then this is the episode for you because we're going to break down the warning signs of burnout, why top performers are most at risk, and what leaders can do to protect their teams, and most importantly, how you can recover and how you can re-energize. So welcome to the Mind Your Business podcast, the podcast for whatever business is on your mind. Let's get started.
Well, that's excellent.
Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Mind Your Business podcast. If this brings value to your life, will you do me a favor? Will you like, subscribe, and share this with others? It would be amazing also if you would leave a review wherever you listen. This helps me add as much value to as many people as possible. So how do you know if you're just tired or if you're experiencing burnout? Because there is absolutely a difference. It's important to understand that burnout doesn't just happen overnight. See, it actually creeps up on you. It sneaks in. And if you don't recognize the signs early, well, you could burn out before you even realize what's happening. There are three main areas where burnout shows up. Physically, emotionally, and then in your performance. So let's break down some of the signs of each of these so that you can give yourself a personal assessment. Let's talk about the physical signs. You have chronic fatigue. You're constantly exhausted, even after a full night's sleep. It does not matter if there's 8 hours or if you get 10 hours. It does not matter if you get a nap in the middle of the afternoon. It does not matter if you come in the evening and you spend a little time in the recliner on the couch. You just feel fatigued all of the time. And then this may lead to frequent headaches or muscle pain because what happens is stress begins to build up in the body and it causes physical tension. And then you have a weakened immune system. You're getting sick more often because your body is being impacted by all of the stress and the burnout that you're experiencing. And then you may notice changes in your appetite or your sleep patterns. Either you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough, you're eating too much, or you're just skipping meals altogether. But burnout can affect you physically. Emotional signs. You have increased cynicism or detachment. I think this one shows up probably the most prominent with many different people. You find yourself just caring less about work. You care less about the people that you're around. You notice that the things that you used to enjoy, you just don't enjoy those anymore. And then this leads to mood swings. People are saying, you're just more irritable. Are you frustrated about something? Did I make you mad? Or even depression. You start to feel depressed and you don't know why. And then this leads to a loss of motivation. Even the tasks that used to excite you, things you were excited about doing, now it just all feels like a chore because burnout has begun to impact you emotionally. And then you'll notice it in your performance. You have decreased productivity. It just doesn't matter how hard you try. You can try, and you can try, but you can't focus. You can't get work done. You're working at a slower pace. You're making more mistakes. Your brain is foggy. You're just making errors that you normally wouldn't make. And then you have avoidance behaviors. You start procrastinating. You're taking more breaks or just even dreading doing any of the work at all. Think of burnout like a car engine overheating. If you've ever had car trouble, especially with an overheating engine, it's the worst. And if you keep pushing it without stopping to let it cool down, eventually it's going to break down. It's going to explode. And your body and your mind works the exact same way. If you ignore the warning signs, if you ignore the warning lights, burnout is inevitable. So if you're already feeling some signs and you're just wondering, is that me? Well, consider this your sign. I want to help you before you burn out. Now, here's the thing that may be surprising to some. Burnout doesn't just happen to people who don't enjoy their work. Many of us think burnout only happens to those who are miserable doing their work. But in fact, it's the hardest working, most passionate, and most dedicated people that are the ones who are the most at risk. And the obvious question is, why? But the answer is very simple. It's because they push themselves the hardest. It's called the overachiever's trap. I want you to see if you can relate to any or even all three of these characteristics to see if maybe you're experiencing some burnout because you're an overachiever. Overachievers struggle to say no. They struggle to say no. They just can't say the word no. See, high achievers, they often take on too much work because they don't want to let other people down. They just can't say no. So when someone says, can you stay late? Can you help with this? Can you go here? Can you do that? Can you work this weekend? See, people with a strong desire to achieve, they often have a hard time just saying no, and they find themselves doing too much, and they lead themselves to burnout. Overachievers also think rest is laziness. Some of you immediately identified with that. You have an always-on mindset. It makes people feel guilty for taking breaks. So picture yourself on vacation with your family at the beach, but instead of building sandcastles and playing with your kids, you're getting work done on your phone or your computer, sitting under a beach umbrella. See, you're physically present, but you're mentally absent. See, overachievers, they set unrealistic expectations. Perfectionists push themselves beyond what's sustainable. A 2023 study found that 67% of high performers experience burnout at some point in their career. And this is compared to 45% of the general workforce who aren't overachievers. And the problem with this is that your pursuit of perfection, it never ends because you'll never be able to achieve perfection. And this alone, like the Energizer Bunny, keeps you going and going and going, but it's leading you to burnout. Just imagine an Olympic sprinter trying to run a marathon at the same pace they run a 100-meter dash. Well, see, they would burn out before they even made it halfway. And this is the same thing that happens to high achievers when they don't pace themselves. So the key here is to prevent burnout before it happens. But the question is, how? Well, first, let me address leaders, managers, or owners. All of you who are in charge of teams. I want to encourage you here and just remind you that your responsibility is not only to yourself, but it's also to the good of everyone that you lead. Now, before you dismiss this responsibility, I know you're thinking, well, they're in charge, they're grown adults, but listen, let me remind you that burned out employees don't just quit and leave. They often quit and stay. This means that they're sitting at their desk or they're on the job site each and every day, but they're costing you lost revenue due to a lack of engagement. So I want to offer you, as the leader, 3 key ways that you can help. First, encourage work-life balance. Now, I know most of us don't want to talk about this. It's overused, it's overplayed, and it's abused. And I'm not talking about the overabuse of work-life balance. I am talking about in the context of a healthy work culture. Because as the leader, you have to set the tone for this. You can set the tone and change the experience for everyone. For example, if you're emailing your team at midnight, they're going to feel pressured to always be on. They'll feel like if you're emailing at midnight, they have to respond at midnight. So if you're going to encourage a behavior, you have to model it. So if you're going to encourage this work-life balance, you have to take responsibility and model it. I think another powerful way to help in this area is with personal days and vacation days. So like for my team, I provide everyone with both personal and sick days. It's up to them how these days are being used. But if I give these days, if I provide these for my team, I expect these days to be taken. And if these days are not being taken, it's an indication to me that the individual could be at risk of burnout. So if I notice a trend where these are never taken, they're never out of the office or off the job, I have to go to them and say, why are you not taking your days? So the key is don't make your team feel guilty for taking the days that they've been provided. Actually encourage them to do it. Another thing is to recognize and reward their effort. I'll reiterate a theme for this podcast. People want to feel valued. They want to know that what they do matters. It's proven that employees who feel valued are less likely to burn out. I've discussed this at length on previous episodes on how to value your team, and I'll leave those in the notes so that you can go back and watch or listen to these. See, recognizing their hard work, valuing them, it doesn't even have to be monetary. Now, it's great when it is, and I encourage you to do that when you can. But even a simple thank you can go a long way. Even a simple, I see you. I see the extra effort. I see the work that you're putting in. To know that they have been seen and that what they do matters and is appreciated goes a long way. Another thing as the leader is to create a culture of open communication. An open door policy where they feel comfortable discussing their workload concerns. If the employee simply has a poor work ethic, I know if they come to you and they're complaining about the workload, but it's poor work ethic, well, you can address that concern when they come to you. However, it may actually bring some clarity to you on some of the things that you may have missed in the office or on the job site. See, ultimately, if there's a lot of these conversations from employees, well, then there could be some validity to this. But either way, addressing these concerns, it's better for everyone. They know that they're being valued. Take initiative to model communication. I think this is important. Ask, what's one thing that I can do to make your job more manageable? How can I help? See, this communicates that you care. So when you have this open door policy, when you have invited them in because you want them to feel valued and that they can communicate, ask them questions about supporting them and helping them. Imagine how your team would respond if you went to them tomorrow and said, how can I be a better leader to support you and help make your job more manageable? They would appreciate it so much. So what do we do if we're already feeling burned out? How do we bounce back? Well, here's the good news is that burnout isn't permanent and you can recover. So here are 4 practical steps that will help you to overcome burnout. Number 1 is to prioritize rest without guilt. I know when you rest, you're thinking about all the things that aren't being done, but I want to challenge you. Shift your focus. So for example, if you work out to build muscle, the workout is tearing your muscle so it can grow. Well, in this process, rest is imperative because if the muscle is overworked and doesn't have time to rest, it will not grow back bigger or stronger. And the same works in your overall health. Your body needs to rest. So shift your focus. If it helps you, think about it this way. You are being productive even while you're resting because your body is being healthy. Number 2 is to reevaluate your workload. So ask yourself this question: what can I delegate, delay, or drop? Stop glorifying busyness. Productivity isn't about how much you do, but it's about how effectively you do it. So what could you delegate? What could you just drop altogether? What could be delayed? You don't have to do everything right now. Another is to reconnect with what motivates you. What do you find meaningful in your work? Why did you start doing what you do in the first place? This is another common topic on this podcast. We talk about this a lot. So I encourage you to follow along and visit previous episodes because I've got a lot of content that I think will help you with this. But passion and purpose go a long way to help prevent burnout. When you're reminded that there's a reason that I do what I do every single day, and you have meaning and you have purpose, it will help prevent burnout in your life. And the next one is to invest in self-care and personal growth. This means exercise, eat well, get enough sleep. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities. You need to find hobbies outside of work. Find something that recharges you mentally and emotionally. For me, I love to ride motorcycles. I keep aquariums and I spend a lot of time with my family. These are all things that bring me joy. They help me to disconnect so that I can re-energize. Now, none of these tips are hard to do. None of this is rocket science. None of this is extremely hard. In fact, they're actually all really simple. But it's the simple things often that makes the biggest difference. For example, did you know that research tells us that employees who take just simple short breaks throughout the day are 45% more productive than those who don't? It's very simple, a short, simple break, but it increases our productivity. We aren't much different than our phones, if you think about it. If you never recharge it, it's going to die. And then sometimes you even have to recharge it throughout the day. And the same is true for you. You have to rest and you have to recharge if you're going to avoid burnout. Let me say this. Burnout is not a badge of honor. It's a red flag. So if you're feeling drained, unfocused, or disconnected, it is time for you to do something about it. Start recognizing your limits. Take some steps to recover. And managers, leaders, bosses, make an effort to create an environment that protects your team from burnout. Let me give you a challenge to work on until our next conversation together. I want you to ask yourself, what's one small change I can make today to reduce burnout from happening in my personal or in my professional life? What's one simple thing that I can do today to reduce burnout from happening in my personal or professional life? If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a review, share this with a friend or a coworker, someone who you think needs to hear it. Thanks for tuning in to the Mind Your Business podcast. I'll see you on the next episode, but until then, go and mind your business.